Before we begin, commissioners, please put away cell phones. If you have personal business during the meeting, please move for a recess. If you are speaking telephonically, please mute your phone unless you are speaking. Also, when speaking, please state your name for those streaming the meeting. As a reminder to attendees, this meeting is being streamed live. The camera is located in the back of the council chambers above the clock. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Commissioner Seals. Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Seals?
Here.
Commissioner Stafford?
Here.
Commissioner Seals, you do have a quorum with Commissioner Brown, Seals, and Stafford present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Stafford, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item of business is approval of the agenda. Before changes are discussed, are there conflicts of interest to declare? If the commission would like to discuss anything under the consent agenda, such as the minutes, they may need to be removed from the consent agenda and placed under new business at this time. Are there changes to the agenda? Hearing no changes to the agenda will stand as presented unless objection is raised. Next on the agenda are reports. City Deputy Administrator, do we have a report?
Chairman, no report tonight. I'm going to yield my time to the Public Works Director.
Perfect. Public Works, do we have a report from the Public Works Director?
Thank you, Commissioner Seals, Planning Commission. What I'm going to do tonight is give you an update on the downtown Main Street Couplet project. So I'm going to open up what the engineers call a roll plot. And so this is a PDF document that I received from DOT and their consultants, HDR. And so I will walk you through the current status of the Main Street project. We'll talk about its size and its scope. But I want to zoom way out and I want to show you how broad this is. So you can see that it encompasses many, many blocks in downtown and encompasses existing roads like KGB and Main Street, as well as new streets like Talkeetna and Yenlo. I'll zoom in. This is just hard to see, but it makes for an extremely complicated plan set. So we have 4 volumes of 300 pages, basically, just in engineering drawings that make up this this project that's been in the works for 15 or more years. It starts and stopped several times. Everyone says, when is this thing going to get done? That light is at the end of the tunnel, finally. So just an update on what the schedule is. Because it's a DOT project, it follows their very complicated but orderly process. And so what they've been working on is certifying the scope of the project, how big it's going to be, where it starts and it stops, and then they have to take that to the federal highways because a lot of this money is being provided by the Federal Highway Administration through the DOT. And so they certify that and they say, yeah, that's the size of the project. We're going to go from the KGB connection at Wasilla Highway up to Bogard, where Main Street connects now, and where the new Yenlo extension will connect. And then how far east and west do we go? Road connections, it really remains in the downtown core, but there are some connections for stoplights, for instance, that the Bogard lights will connect to the Lucille Nelson intersection, which is interesting. So they're figuring out how to make those communication wires connect And so I was meeting with the electrical designer last week about pulling wires halfway down the block and installing the new stoplights and pulling those wires back in so those all talk to each other. And then we are diagnosing where the streetlights are controlled. You may find it interesting to know that the streetlights for all of downtown are controlled over here on Swanson and Willow. And so they cross Main Street and they go all the way down to the library, which is uncommon. So we're going to fix things like that. So there's tentacles of downtown that are touched in every aspect of this project. Drainage for storm drain will go from Wasilla Lake all the way to Lucille Lake. And so it's not even encompassed in this drawing I'm going to show you, but there's many, many systems that are being updated with this project. So once the Federal Highways has signed off that, the limits of the project are reasonable and understood through DOT, then, they have worked with all of the utility providers. So we have MEA, MTA, NSTAR, ACS, GCI, and who else is there? Anyone else out there providing input on what they need to do with their utilities, because, I would say a vast majority of the work that will happen in the beginning is having utility providers relocate their infrastructure out of the road prism. And that's what DOT really pushes for, is gas lines are in the shoulders, electrical is either above ground in the shoulders or underground, and NSTAR has the opportunity to move components out of the way, and so that's a lot of work that has to happen. So there's a whole engineering team within DOT Utilities that manages what needs to happen. We are one of those utility providers, so we have review for water and sewer issues. We've been looking very closely at the plans to look for opportunities to address issues that we know about, and also just protecting infrastructure. One of the main things we look at is freeze potential for both water and sewer. Do we have the right installation in the right spots? Do they realize that we have a water service that goes somewhere? Are they setting something on top of a water valve? Is the storm drain going to work? We'll receive all this infrastructure, especially on the storm drain side. So is it going to work for us in the future? So there's a lot of moving parts for this. And then the goal right now is that a plan set can be agreed upon by all parties this coming March, so that it can go out to bid this spring, and construction could start this fall, fall of 2025. They would like to see a contractor under contract, and then allow those utilities to get out into the field and start to make those modifications as soon as possible, because that's really one of the first things that has to happen. I think with some of the alignments I'm going to show you, there's probably going to be opportunities for the new roads to be built, much like what you're seeing on Seward Meridian right now. If you notice what Seward Meridian project looks like, they haven't impacted the road too much, but they're in the shoulders, they're up by Alcantara, right? They know where they got to get going, and they know that they want to limit impacts to the driving public as much as possible. So they're really focusing on those new sections that limit impacts to the public, but get them moving ahead on. And I think there's a lot of similarities to how most of the contractors will approach this in their bids. You don't know what they're gonna do until you find out who the low bidder is, and then they work through that with the construction team. But like I said, there's a lot of similarities. So unless there's any questions from everything I said now, I'd be happy to answer those, and then I'll take you kind of street by street and we can look at that. Okay. What I'm gonna do, to move so I sound a little better, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna zoom in on the KGB connection, and then we'll work our way down as if we're driving into town from KGB. So just off the screen to your left is where the new road will connect to the KGB project, which is wrapping up right now. So if you come off of KGB, you see that there are actually 2 lanes that come into town, but only one is connected to anything. This new road alignment will have 2 lanes coming from KGB PW intersection right past the Native Clinic. And you can see at the lower section where my cursor is, these are the Native Clinic's parking islands. So there's 2 lanes that come into town, and then we get to the first street. I forget what the name of the street is. I think it's Center, something like that. There's a left-hand turn lane for that, or you can turn right into the Native Clinic. And then there's some islands here. And then you see that the road diverges and you make a sweeping right turn. And what it does is it creates that separation between Main Street, which is right here where the numbers are, and the new Talkeetna connection. And so this is an interesting piece of the project. This is a return lane. So if you had driven out of town on Main Street and for some reason you decide that you need to go back into town, you can peel off to the left and make a left-hand turn and get back onto Talkeetna. So Talkeetna dives down and then connects to this existing cul-de-sac. So this is the cul-de-sac that is just rough graded right now, but it's Centaur basically. So this is the new connection at Centaur and Talkeetna. And so the city road shop is on Centaur. So if I were coming from KGB and wanted to go to the city road shop, I could get in the left-hand lane and I can go up Centaur, and then I would cross Main Street, and then this leads to the existing Centaur, and you've got the welding shops, you've got the tow facility on Centaur, you've got all these kind of light industrial things happening. That's how you can get in and out of Centaur, and that's how like the road shop will be accessed. If we come back to Talkeetna, you are now on the backside of that business plaza that has like the dentist and other units inside of it. It really just, there's kind of a dirt road back here right now, but it connects to Talkeetna sort of. This area where my cursor is the big MEA transfer station, transformer location. It's fenced. They just expanded it a few years ago. So the road goes between some homes and the MEA transformer yard. Then we get into the Talkeetna-Yenlo Street corridor, as they call it. The first business that we come to is the little mini storage here, and then a home that's on several parcels, and then we get to the Turning Leaf Teaching Center, and then we come to East Susitna. And so what you see, the way these drawings are depicted, you'll see that there is some tie-in infrastructure, like on East Susitna. So the sidewalks will wrap around, and then there'll be a match-in from existing asphalt to the new. And based on grades and based on drainage needs, these tie-in points will differ at each street to make sure it works. So then we work our way down Talkeetna further. We pass Paul Minnick's home and properties, and we come to one of the first major changes of the project, other than having Talkeetna connect, is a new crossing at the railroad. And the obliteration of this section of Railroad Avenue. So you will not be able to turn right or left on the Railroad Avenue from Talkeetna. If you wanted to reach the businesses off of Railroad, you would actually have to come back to East Susitna, and then you can come down. They were geometry-wise, proximity to the railroad, and because of the grade changes, there's a retaining wall right here right now that says like welcome to Wasilla and has the trees and the flagpoles and stuff. They have to put retaining walls on both sides of the road to go from up above by the Chinese restaurant down to the railroad crossing. Another interesting thing to denote is that the current railroad track crossing is highlighted, but there's planning for a second spur line next to it. And that's of interest to us because down at the depot, we would really like to see a siding so that trains can stop and have an at-grade loading for passengers so they don't have to climb up into the train. We have a at-grade loading platform, and that's not possible with one train track. So to have the second train track really bodes well for the future vision of the train depot. So now we're at the new intersection of the Talkeetna and Yenlo intersection of Parks. So Yenlo exists, of course. This is the subway right here. What you can see is that there's no left-hand turn onto Talkeetna because it's one way into town. So you have a large island here in the parks that keeps the two lanes separated and prevents any left-hand turns. But you have a turning pocket if you were coming from Meadow Lakes and you wanted to turn on the Yenlo. There's a queue here, and there's stoplights, of course, for this intersection. One of the other things to highlight is that this drawing does show some of the new drainage upgrades that will be taking place. If you'll remember, from about Yenlo down to McDonald's, there's quite a few grassy swales in front, between the parks and the businesses. Some of those currently serve as localized drainage infiltration basins, but they don't connect to each other. So Safeway has a few, and they've done some grading so that their surface waters drain into them. But what DOT, and that's all DOT right of way. And so what DOT is doing is turning them all into connected stormwater infiltration basins, which is a good long-term plan for managing our stormwater and protecting the water quality of both Wasilla Lake and Lake Lucille. So it is good to see them using those underutilized areas for long-term stormwater management and treatment. So now we've crossed parks, we are on to Yenlo, and we have gone by the subway. This is the backside of the Cars Safeway Mall. There's like the coffee shop is right here in the corner, and then you have the main entrance into the Cars Safeway facility. One of the things that we've done coordinating with DOT is to address the amount of traffic coming in and out of this. They had it, I would classify it as a lower quality entrance, and we expressed to them how many vehicles come in and out, how it's, the downtown, it's one of the largest downtown businesses, and so we expect enough traffic in and out that we want to see that crossing upgraded. And they've also taken steps to make pedestrian crossing safer. So we have a improved crossing corridor. We brought concerns about the number of WASI users that make their way on scooters and other mobile devices, and so they've taken that to heart and have upgraded the safety for the crossing here. So we're happy to see that. And then we're moving up to Swanson, and so Swanson is going to have a stoplight. So that's another change. There's about 4 new stoplights in this project. So Swanson will have a stoplight so that you can control access in and out. You can see that the improvements on Swanson go quite a ways behind Cars to manage the new storm drain system that we need. They have new curb and gutter. We're connecting into the existing storm drainage in certain areas and adding more. And then we move up to the new section of Yenlo. So Yenlo exists basically to this cul-de-sac at the moment. We have the thrift store here. We have an apartment building. This is an extremely confined space. Yenlo's right-of-way was probably too small from the very beginning, and so this has caused DOT and Federal Highways a little bit of angst because of encroachments. The thrift store has an eave that encroaches over the right-of-way, which Federal Highways usually does not appreciate. So we've been asked by DOT to go through the permitting process to permit that as a right-of-way encroachment, and that's one of the first steps to allow a variance, if you will, of Federal Highways. So we'll be bringing that forward to the Planning Commission at a future date as we figure out the right path so that we check all the right boxes for DOT and Federal Highways. There are some light poles that will have to be relocated because they just are in the way for this development. But you can see there's more storm drainage infrastructure up here, and then there's quite a bit of a grade change. Swanson is quite a bit lower than Bogard, so this new alignment has to climb fairly rapidly up to tie in up here. So this is the northern end of the project. So this is the Yenlo Bogard connection. You can see that there are some islands here to control traffic flow. This is a one-way connection, of course, so you can either take a right onto Bogard or you can wait and take a left. There's no turn lanes because you can't turn left off of Bogard onto here. And then we will move up to a couple of driveway connections. So this is the credit union, and this is the I think it's a physical therapy office. But their access will be pretty drastically changed. You will not be able to turn left out of this driveway. You'll have to turn right out of this driveway if you're trying to leave the credit union. And if you need to go the other direction, you'll have to use Main Street. And then that brings us to the Main Street Wasilla Fishhook intersection. So there's some pretty substantial alignment changes here in that DOT is really trying to work with the amount of stormwater and groundwater that this intersection has. What we have here is a new infiltration basin that's taking all of the water from the curb and guttered sections, puts it into a regraded swale, and then what doesn't infiltrate will overflow and go under Main Street, and then go into another one here, another infiltration basin, and what doesn't infiltrate will go into the storm drain system that connects on, they call it Bogard, but it's actually Nelson. And then there's a similar system here on the upper side of this currently vacant lot where the stormwater is collected and what doesn't infiltrate goes into the system. You may recognize this facility on the corner here has always had groundwater. They have a terrible standing pond there, it seems like. So part of this is to alleviate that issue. We have some extra drainage over here to fix that. And then that brings us back to Main Street as we transition back through the heart of downtown. And so you can see that some of the infrastructure to notice is that we have a separated bike and pedestrian corridor. So it's 2 lanes through downtown, but we have this offset zone where this will be landscaped, and then the sidewalks are further away from the road to bring them up to the fronts of the buildings, so there's more of a downtown walkable city feel, and then also provide the pedestrian and bike access that is required in today's transportation planning. If we look on Swanson, the improvements, especially by the post office, are pretty substantial. So there are this section of Main Street also has a lot of encroachments. One of which is the front of the museum building. So there's some gold dredge buckets, there's a sign, the front couple feet of the museum building itself are encroaching in the right of way. And so we have some modifications to make there. The Postal Service building also has some sidewalk issues that have to be dealt with. And so what you see is to make sure that the driveways flow, the DOT is bringing the project quite a ways down so that they can get into this new driveway here and realign it so that, because you won't be able to, the only way to access it, unless you're coming down Main Street, is to take a left into here or use Swanson and turn in. So they're addressing the high traffic load. There's also going to be an island here at this point. We move then to Herning Avenue that has a slight realignment because you will be able to turn right in and right out off of Herning or across. And then we come back to the main intersection that we're all used to, Main Street on this side, KGB on this side. You won't be able to turn left on the Main Street anymore, so that turning pocket is turned into a large island. The turning pocket onto KGB is realigned slightly because they are making a larger queuing zone, but they are also going to be preventing left-hand turns. They want traffic to flow as quickly and efficiently as possible between these two intersections now. come back to the reconstructed railroad crossing. We see the existing railroad track crossing, and then we see plans for a second one in the future. And then we see this Railroad Avenue intersection here that allows you to head down toward Lake Lucille and the businesses that are along here. This intersection is still kind of in flux because any of the improvements within the railroad right-of-way, they have substantial say over, and they're not really excited about this proximity to the railroad tracks. But because of the size of this corridor, I think we're going to have to just work through it. But this is still a point of contention as we work through all of the different comments from the different stakeholders, and the railroad, of course, is one of them. And then we move up to Susitna Avenue again, and so there's, other than the formalized sidewalks, curb and gutter, this alignment pretty much is what you see today. They're just, we don't have curb and gutter at the moment, we don't have sidewalks, so that'll be a great improvement for pedestrian safety and access around this area. We come to Park Avenue, then we come to Lakeview, and there's this is where the project transitions from sidewalks to a separated path, which is pretty much what we have right now. I think the separated path starts further past Centaur right now, but they're going to transition it so that it looks a lot like the path that we have further up the hill. And then that brings us back to where we're tying in, where the road rejoins itself. And I honestly don't know where the naming will stop between KGB and Talkeetna, but it's somewhere in this area. And then the last thing that really isn't visible here, but what will happen, let's see if I can explain this. I want to talk just a minute about drainage. I think what I'll do is I'm going to bring up the parcel viewer, and then we can look at the drainage, and then, oh my gosh, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. So in general, our two lakes are our outfalls for our drainage. And as we discussed, the project side, the north side of the Parks Highway is going to drain down Yenlo, and then these grassy swales are going to be combined together with cross culverts. And so the water will be given time to settle and infiltrate, and then it'll end in this zone. And I don't see a crossing under Cruzy right now. I believe this is the end of the line, much like Idita Park. This might have more water in it than it's had in the past, but it'll be the end of the line for surface runoff. On the south side, this section of the right-of-way, the railroad right-of-way, is problematic for drainage. And so the plan right now is that it's going to be the water collected through the storm drains. It's going to be run down Railroad Avenue, and then it's going to cross under the railroad, and then it's going to go into this drainage ditch between the railroad and the Parks Highway. The hydrology report is concerned that this won't be enough storage, and then the railroad doesn't want much water stored along the railroad tracks. They're very concerned about it degrading the strength of the railroad tracks. So the current hydrology report calls for an overflow drain that would go under Parks, and it would eventually enter into Wasilla Lake, affecting Newcomb Park. We're not excited about that. We don't want to have a water feature that impacts the park because of this nice grassy lawn and just the way we know that the public uses it. So we're working through discussions right now to have a way for the overflow to make its way there if there's a storm event, but not create a drainage feature that negatively impacts the park. So we're talking about elevations and anticipated flows and just figuring out how we can balance our desire to maintain the current status of the park, but also understand that DOT has to work with the railroad's concerns about impounding water against the railroad tracks. So that's one nuance they're still working through on the drainage of, I guess you'd say the east side of the project. The west side of the project has more drainage systems coming down this side of Railroad Avenue, and then using portions of the city-owned parcel here that's parking for boaters on Lake Lucille. And so the plan right now is to have 2 detention basins where the water would enter in here and be given time to infiltrate, and then if it overwhelms that, it crosses under the relined parking area, enters in a second infiltration basin here, and then if it overwhelms that, it continues down through the right of way, and then its eventual outfall is another detention basin right along the shore here. So, DOT has, like I said, a very compartmentalized, organized structure. They have hydrologic engineers. They have H&H reports, which is, what does H&H stand for? Well, it has to do with hydrology and the runoff. So you can tell that the project spans from one lake to the other and from Bogard down to this tie-in point here at Talkeetna. The current estimate is more than $50 million in construction. This is on the DOT's STIP, or Statewide Transportation Improvement Plan. I don't know what the bids will actually look like. I suspect with inflation, it'll be even more than $50 million. But they have been working through our comments, the other stakeholders' comments, and with the utilities to try to find value-saving options. So one of the other things that we've been working closely with is the telecom providers. So not only is the railroad, an important transportation link for the state, it is also a telecom corridor. So there's a bunch of fiber optic systems that run up and down it, and there are some of national security interests. And so we have to work with the telecom providers to find new locations for those things. And they have some really good plans for relocating them within the city, but in facilities that are less impacted by this project. So we're really happy to see that level of coordination happening because ACS is one involved. They have infrastructure, but they don't serve any customers out here. So that's been an interesting coordinating effort. Can I answer any other questions?
So, Commissioner Brown, could you clarify the interaction between the customers on Yinlo and Main Street? Is that going to be the city responsibility, or DOT going to take care of that, resolving any issues?
That's a great question. Which customers are you thinking of?
The ones along Main Street and the ones along Talkeetna and Yinlo?
When, if they are,
If there's an encroachment issue or...
oh yeah, that's DOT's responsibility. We're here to help and assist. The Yinlo one, the way DOT has laid out what they need us to do is we're going to acknowledge, especially with the overhang of that building, we're going to acknowledge that it is an encroachment, provide the encroachment permit, which is not a very complicated process. And then DOT can take that and say, well, the local entity has approved it. Because what will end up happening is all of this infrastructure will be turned over to the city. So the DOT will build it and then hand it off for maintenance. And so their process is to say to Federal Highways, it's going to end up in the local, they have a term for us, recipient, or, we're building it for the city, we're gonna give it to the city, and the city has permitted it, so it should be fine. So that's the plan on both of those.
Because I know that there had been some former concerns and complaints along Main Street from business owners, how this is going to impact them.
Yeah, right. And the unfortunately, the history of the project has been that it's on the DOT side, it's been through at least 4 project managers. On the consultant side for DOT, it's been through almost the same number of project managers. I'm the 3rd Public Works Director to touch it, so there's a lot of relearning. And then on the DOT side, they have a young, new batch of engineers in all the different disciplines working on it. So we're working closely with, for instance, the utility engineer to navigate those agreements between all of those utility providers to make sure everyone understands where their facilities will go, and if there's impacts, what will take precedent, and if the gas line's in the way of the fiber optics, what's happening, that sort of thing. The other thing that I forgot to mention was that the city, through the original MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, has also committed to putting some, if not all, of the electrical power lines underground. But just as the streets make a grid, so do the power lines. And so one of the things we're working with MEA right now is to figure out, Herning's a good example. We have overhead lines that come from both directions, go into the project and out of the project. So what happens on Herning? Where do the lines go underground? How far do they stay underground? And where do they come back up? Because DOT will say, well, we're on Main Street, we're on Yenlo, we're not going down Herning between Yenlo and Main Street. So there's a lot of details still that we're working through. So
And I'm assuming, because since I was originally Planning Commission, it's been years and a lot has happened, but what big has happened in the last 10 years is the increase in traffic flow already. And so I'm assuming this is intended to relieve some of that pressure.
yes, and that question has been brought up by other people that have reviewed this. Mr. Graham on the City Council had asked about the intersection on East Susitna, and so because they've been so diligent in organizing, DOT has been, and their consultant has been so diligent in organizing how they make decisions. One of the questions was, why wasn't East Susitna receiving lights? And they had recently reevaluated the current and projected traffic flow, and there are thresholds about when an intersection is going to see enough traffic that it pushes it into a more congested state. And so that's why we're not seeing East Susitna receiving lights, but we are seeing lights placed on Swanson and of course on Yenlo and Bogard. So they're able to refresh those numbers even though the project has had such a long lifespan.
And last question, Talkeetna and Main Street, those will remain two-way traffic?
No, Main Street will only be towards the Parks Highway. So if you come into town on Wasilla Fishhook, you can go straight into Main Street if you want to, or you can turn and go on to Bogard, or you can turn and go on to Nelson. But if you were on the KGB side of town and you wanted to get to Wasilla Fishhook, you would have to go down Talkeetna,
Okay.
and then across to Yenlo, then up to Bogard, and then around to Wasilla Fishhook.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stafford, a couple questions. So forgive me if I didn't catch it, but the current four-way up by the post office, that's going to be a lighted intersection?
Correct.
With a crosswalk for someone going across from the post office? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. And then, is this going to add to the city's snow removal responsibilities?
It will.
Okay.
Yep. And it's going to add some nuances because we're going to have a separated pathway. And so we've already started to prepare for that. We have a new piece of equipment called a a trackless, which is a single occupant articulated piece of equipment that DOT uses for something similar to this, but we have a snow blower for that. So we can, it will require more finesse for snow removal than we've had to in certain areas, but we're also very familiar with like snow removal in the parks. So what we're doing right now is, in Public Works, I have Parks and Properties and Roads. They're already working on their collaboration for, because this will be a lot like park snow removal, where there's sensitive plants on both sides, there's buildings, there's infrastructure that we will not drive a grader down the sidewalk for, right? We're gonna be a lot more nuanced and finessed with it. So we're already starting to build that capability internally and having the right equipment to do that.
Okay. And you mentioned where it comes across Talkeetna to Yinlo, it's gonna basically go where that Welcome to Wasilla sign is currently at.
Yes.
Is there any plans to do something different to still have a Welcome to Wasilla somewhere, or is that just gonna go away?
That's a great question. I will double check. I don't think the actual welcome to Wasilla is affected. I think
Okay.
it's off to the side of it, but what will be affected are some of the trees and the flagpoles. And so at the city council side of things, we've been talking about relocating those, and I think that those flagpoles are probably gonna end up down at the train depot.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool. And so, at least in my opinion, I think it'll help with the north-south traffic. Is it gonna have a negative impact on the Parks Highway traffic? I mean, that's already kind of a nightmare through there anyway at peak times. Is it gonna have a negative, I mean, I would hope at least it would. Is it gonna have a negative impact, or is there any way to determine that at this point?
Well, I mean, I would agree that when you add another light, you're gonna add another bottleneck.
Yeah.
So then the question is, can we work with DOT to have the timing such that it moves? And I know that it is very much in their interests to make it as, to limit the impacts. So I would expect some impacts, but I know that DOT will be working on the timing, sequencing of those lights to limit as much as possible, because while this project has been going on for a really long time, the discussion on the Wasilla South bypass has been going on the same amount of time, and that has lost all steam. This is continuing to go ahead with construction, so this will have all of DOT's attention.
Yeah, because like just if you're on the parks and you're gonna turn left on the KGB to head south, is that pocket, the left turn pocket there, is that as deep as what we currently have? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it is, but I could double check that with DOT.
Okay. I'm just curious.
I think what you see them doing here is trying to balance the left-hand turn onto Yenlo
Right.
and the left-hand turn onto KGB.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for and thanks for the presentation. It's been very informative.
Sorry if I rambled. There's a lot to cover.
Yeah, Commissioner Seals, couple questions. Back to Talkeetna and Centaur, is there gonna be a light at that intersection?
There is not. There are no new lights planned for the south side of this project, except for the new railroad crossing. There are no lights added to this section of town.
The car's entrance off of Yenlo, that's a very busy intersection,
Yes.
and it has 3 ways in at this current time, and that'll be limited to 2, northbound and westbound on.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me see if I can answer that. So if we look at this alignment, they are not losing, they're not losing in access, but what they are losing is one of the left-hand turns that you could make coming into town from either Talkeetna or Meadow Lakes. So you can see the turn pocket here. This will allow you to use the second entrance to get into Safeway cars, or you could just go through the light and then use their normal entrance. So they don't technically lose an entrance, they just have a limit to how many left turns across Parks they can get into.
All right. I've heard lots of comments by business owners on Main Street. And I know a lot of people put a lot of work into this, but I see all the people in the businesses on the west side of Main Street being impacted directly by this project. It really concerns me that a lot of these businesses have been there for many, many years before this project was even thought of. There's existing infrastructure on the east side of Main Street that I think should be utilized more than the west side. It's just my personal opinion, but I see a severe impact to businesses that have fronted Main Street in that corridor for many, 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 many years. And I think it's going to be hard for those businesses to recoup that space. And then final question I have, plowing versus snow removal. And I realized during the first 24 hours after snowfall, there's going to be a plowing. Does the city have plans to actually remove that snow and put it somewhere else?
So what we typically do is plow it off the road and it goes onto the shoulder, right? And then, so are you referring to like for pedestrian access?
Well, yeah, if we're gonna put in this bike path and this sidewalk and we get a 30 to 40 inch snowfall, it's gonna be many, many days before that is cleared up, which is going to impact those business owners once again. And we have more chances of snow than we do of green grass.
Yeah, so I think the major change so there's kind of two, I guess you could say there's three standards or three styles of road in this plan. Current Main Street has no sidewalks for the most part, and so then snow is pushed off the road and it makes a berm, and then that berm has to be dealt with. And then we have sections of road where there's a sidewalk, curb and sidewalk, and so we plow that up onto the sidewalk, and then we come back again, we try to move it as far behind the sidewalk as possible so that there's some walkable space, and we use that as storage for a while, and then when we get time to catch up, then we come through with our snow blower and we load it in the trucks and we take it away. So we do that in the downtown corridor already right now. And so we're really good at that, and we've been getting better equipment so that we don't set a whole grader up on the road, up on the sidewalk, and we can be like a surgeon with a scalpel and not affect the plants or the properties behind the sidewalk, and then still load it in the trucks and truck it to our snow dump. The difference with some of the alignments on the Main Street will be that there is now a planted section between the edge of the sidewalk and the road. And so that can be snow storage. But then to deal with the snow on that sidewalk, we need that nimble piece of machinery that we already got, where we can now get in front of those businesses and help them address pedestrian access. We can use some of the planted area between the businesses and the road for short-term snow storage, but we do realize that now our downtown customers will be trying to use those sidewalks, and so that's where we're trying to mobilize our crews that understand the park clearing, because it's very similar. We have lots of people that use Idita Park as their pedestrian access to get downtown, and so we'll go and while roads is clearing roads, parks will be in those pedestrian accesses, opening those up. And so we're going to leverage that model to address the downtown shopping and business owner needs for people to get in and out of the businesses as soon as the snow stops falling.
One last thing. The section between the Parks Highway and Bogart on the west side, could you get the commissioners a large blow-up detail of that?
Probably. Which section are you talking about?
From Parks north to Bogart, basically.
This section right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will, I'll work with planning clerk and I'll give you this copy. This, you can zoom way in on this, so
Okay.
you're more than welcome to have this to dive deeply into it.
Thank you for your presentation this evening.
Thank you very much.
City Attorney, do we have a report from the City Attorney?
My microphone is beeping alarmingly, but there we go. Thank you, Commissioner Seals. Last meeting, we spent some time walking through Division 4 of the proposed revisions to Chapter 16 of City Code. We discussed zoning district uses and short-term rentals, among with density and dimensional requirements, and Holly and I are working hard to implement the Commission's feedback as well as Council's on those areas. We had discussed also the Commission's proposed changes to pending ordinance 2425 involving changes to the provisions of City Code addressing the responsibilities of boards and commissions. I've prepared a resolution formalizing the Commission's feedback, which will be presented at the next meeting. As far as what's on the agenda for tonight pertaining to Title 16, I think that the direction that I'd received from the Commission previously was that the Commission preferred to have sections brought to it after those had already been discussed with Council. Next up in our project is the landscaping and parking sections, which are a little bit controversial. We've sliced and diced and made some big changes, which Holly has not yet had an opportunity to put before Council. So my recommendation tonight is going to be that the Commission postpone its consideration of those sections until its next meeting, at which point Council will have had an opportunity to weigh in.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the public hearing. We do not have any items scheduled for public hearing tonight, so we move on to persons to be heard. We are now at persons to be heard, a time for members of the public to share their views with the Planning Commission. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the Commission or administration. Anyone wishing to step forward may do so at this time. Welcome. Please write your name and contact information on the sign-up sheet. When you are finished, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name's Diana Michelson, and I'm here to discuss with everybody about the rezoning, or I don't do this, so I'm not sure how to say this, but the land development code. My issue right now is the permitting of farm animals in a residential rural area. I live in a neighborhood that, you know, we have nice houses. They're not $1 million homes, but we keep nice lawns. And I've lived there 21 years, almost 21 years. Recently, in 4 or 5 years, the neighbors who used to live there had a nice house, little cabin, nice lawns. They sold their property to their younger daughter, who has now decided to make it a farm. We're talking a small parcel. They're very skinny, they're longer. Most of it goes off on a bluff that goes into our waterway that fills our wells. They've come in and got permits with nobody checking with neighbors, Nobody seen how we feel about this. They've come in, they started out with rabbits. They decided they didn't want to care for those rabbits. They were permitted for 3 rabbits. They didn't want to care for those rabbits. They released those rabbits in the neighborhood. We've now had 4 years of dealing with rabbits eating everything, having to damage to our property, have reinforcing fences for our gardens. They've come in and modified their permit. Again, nobody in the neighborhood is notified of this. They've not modified their permit again to, now they have ducks, they have chickens, they have goats, and the other day they brought in a sheep. And this is on top of 5 dogs in a little log cabin, 1-room thing. They have brought in a bunch of buildings. If I'm allowed to and permitted, I'll show you pictures of what I'm talking about. The neighborhood was, it's a friendly neighborhood. We walk our dogs, things like this. It's turned into a shanty house. And I'm being told I can't do anything about this. Now the white building you'll see in there, they're putting a barn that's probably about 60 feet from my doors. Now in the summer, I'm not going to be able to open my windows. I'm not going to be able to open my doors. This is what I'm gonna look at. This is out my windows, my main windows of my house and my back door. So I just would like to know, who makes these decisions? Nobody's ever come out and visited. They just updated their permits, and there's been complaints on this for 2 years. Nobody checked these complaints. I'm sorry, I'm going a little over, but nobody has checked these complaints. And the response that I've received is nothing. I've called all over the city to do this. So I'd like to address how these farm animals are just allowed to be able to be in. What about our water with nitrate? This runs off into a creek that fills our wells. Who takes care of if we get sick?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes, sir.
Write your name and contact information on the sheet, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Chair, if I may make a comment to the person that spoke, there will be a second chance to come back and speak a second time tonight.
Through the chair, at the end, yes, at the end of the meeting, this is Clerk Wellman. There's a, yes, if you'd like to stay.
Okay, thank you. I just don't know the process.
I've never had to do this before. Of course, my husband's having issues with his health, so I'm having to try and pick up the slack. We are a business owner next to this resident. We've been there and 20 plus years renting. I've been there 35 years, my husband 40. The place, I cannot rent my apartment after it's been upgraded because of the issues that I have, smell, actions, and my property. I don't use chemicals on my property because I love my land. I want to keep it as fertile as possible. I'm not sure who's allowing this to happen, but nobody that I see on my street has a passel of animals like that. And if they're service animals, what the heck? Service animals are just 1 or 2, not a whole farm. I just need to know why there's not actions as a business owner, why I don't have the rights to say something when they have all the rights to do with it as they choose. Nobody told me that this was going on until it happened. And now I'm told that they've been granted permits by who? Certainly not by the people of this city. I pay my taxes. I run a legitimate business. And I would really love to know why I can't get anywhere on this. That's all I have to say. I'd like to know why. I'm not as equally important as the people next door to me. My rights is how I feed my family. This is how we do it, and I do it legally. I pay my taxes. As a matter of fact, I even gave the city part of my land down below that wasn't for use. We don't make problems, but I want to know I have the respect as a business owner that makes money to feed their families and the ability to re-rent that apartment when it becomes available. And at this present smell and condition, that's not going to happen. And I can't raise the rent because of the insurances and everything going up, because there's no way. You can't do that. Not in its present condition. My place is pristine. I pay to have it kept cleaned up and taken care of. That's all I have to say. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you as well. I would suggest that you get with administration here at the city and see what they can do to help you.
I greatly appreciate it.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Please write your name and contact information on the sign-up sheet. When finished, you will state your name for the record and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, my name is Dr. James Martin. I own property on Main Street, Swanson in Maine. I think everybody knows who I am. Came here back in 1984. It's been 40 years. So all along this Main Street, and I agree that traffic needs to flow properly, and I really agree that the city needs to revamp Main Street. I know that you haven't been able to because it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the state. I know the state wants to do everything you guys want to do. And I think when I saw those designs, it looked great to me. I mean, I don't have any problems with that. I mean, there's a whole space there that you said 2 words that are taboo. One was landscape. Well, we're just gonna, all this extra room, we're gonna landscape this. And then the other thing that you guys left out was parking. I mean, the 2 things that we talked about that you guys have been really hammering here, every time I watch your meetings, is parking and landscaping. No more landscaping, more parking, right? So now we're taking away parking and putting in landscaping in front of all these businesses on Main Street. In 2013, I received this letter that said, however, there is no raised median currently proposed for Swanson's western approach to Main Street. And then in 2000, that was 2013. In 2019, I got another one that said the access to Lot 1 Valley Chiropractic on Swanson will be relocated to meet a slight distance requirements. Median will remain. It prevents left turns. On-street parking will not be included along Swanson on the on-street parking along Main Street. We're going to be expanding parking. Extends to Swanson to Paulson as much as possible, still meeting distance requirements. There will be additionally on-street parking off Main Street between Herning and Swanson. In addition, access off Main Street was removed due to conflicts on the on-street parking and slight distance. Parking parallel to your building will still be possible, blah, blah, blah. So every time for the last 40 years we've tried to work on this project, we even had a bridge going over the Parks Highway that eliminated the train, you know. Right-hand turn lane coming off of Main Street onto Parks Highway, just needed to move a building back a little bit, and that would have cleared Main Street for a long time. You have Trunk Road, which is, Seward Meridian, that's gonna open up. It's gonna take a lot of traffic off on Main Street. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are happening. I don't know when a bike path was included in this plan. It was back when Tina Crawford all of a sudden goes, we need a bike path on Main Street. It's a bike path to nowhere. We, as owners of that Main Street, we take all of our snow and push it around the building to the back. We store it all, we do all your work for you. I propose that we just sit down and have a meeting sometime between the owners and the city. Every time I write a letter, I've written 2 recently, I've never gotten a response. When I write letters to DOT, I know that they receive them because somebody's always out of town and their email always sends me a thing back, I'm out of town, but when I get back into town, I'll respond to this email. But then I get no response from them at all, just nothing. So if you can give me, and I know there's nothing you can do here, but I would just love to sit down with Eric. It's the first time I've ever seen these plans was at the city council meeting. So I watched that meeting, and then I came and watched this meeting. It's the first time I've ever seen them. And I'm encouraged because there's a lot of room there. You know, the room is available and we'll do all your work for you. There's no snow on Main Street because the property owners plow it for you and get it off the sidewalk, even along the side of Swanson, and put it and store it in our back lot. So that's been going on for 40 years. I don't think you realize that, but anyway.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time?
Knew that was coming.
Write your name and contact information on the sign-up sheet. When you're finished, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Can I just put same for the address?
That'll work.
My name is Cindy Martin, and my husband and I own Valley Chiropractic on Main Street. Just a brief thing, again, with the current plans, and that is, tonight was the first time that I've been able to take a look at those. They have changed drastically over the last 10 years since they've been talking about this. I do have an exception to a divided sidewalk and bike path. If you look at those plans, it's only for that 3-block radius from Bogard to Herning, I believe. And then from there, it goes back to a regular bike path. So I'm just kind of curious as to why just in that one section on the west side of it, it has that divided landscaping, bike path, and sidewalk. So that's just a question I would like to have clarified. I've had the same response that my husband has had when we've talked to DOT. It's been more of an automated response, we'll get back to you, and then I just haven't. And I realize that there have been numerous changes in personnel, and we would just like to get some of these questions resolved before this moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak? With no one wishing to speak, the next item of business is the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the items for approval under the consent agenda into the record.
Thank you, Commissioner Seals. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have the regular meeting minutes from September 24th of 2024.
And is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Commissioner Stafford, I move we approve the consent agenda as read.
Commissioner Brown, second.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. The next item on the agenda is new business. With no new items under new business, we move on to unfinished business.
And so I guess I'll just, through the chair, this is Clerk Wellman. How did you want us to handle this as far as, it wouldn't be a postpone because what's the best way would you suggest for this agenda item?
Sure, so since this is an agenda item under unfinished business, the commission can just defer consideration of this agenda item until its next meeting.
Thank you.
Sure.
Huh? At this time, I need a motion to defer.
Commissioner Stafford, I make a motion we defer consideration of Title 16 till the next meeting.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Brown, second.
Having been moved by Commissioner Stafford and seconded by Commissioner Brown, we postpone the unfinished business until next meeting. We are now at communications. Are there any comments on the communication items as presented? Hearing none, we now move on to audience comments. We are now at audience comments, a time for members of the public to share their views with the commission. This is not a question and answer period or time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission? This would be time number 2.
What street are you on? Okay, just curious.
And thank you, I again apologize, I don't know the steps of what I'm supposed to be doing. So just to kind of wrap up what I'm talking about with the neighbor issues is, from what I understand, the permit's been modified. Nobody has been notified in our neighborhood, we've just watched this happen. Buildings have been being moved in, put wherever. Like I said, the way my house is situated, and to clarify, this is my landlord. She lives next door. I am her renter of 21 years. I do plan eventually, I'm going to move closer to my grandchildren. So I will be moving in the next few years. And it's gonna make it very difficult for her to rent the duplex. I have the upper portion of a house that's been kind of cut in half. It's gonna make it very difficult for that, because had I known this would happen, I would have never moved to this property. I wouldn't consider it. The way my house is situated, all my windows face that property and my backyard, which is butted up against this barn. So all my windows, I'm gonna have animals in, which I don't have an issue with the animals if they kept them clean and they weren't so noisy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with water testing, but in the spring, I used to run assisted living homes, and we used to have to do water testing. And in the spring, you do a water test, you're gonna always be nitrate because of the dog feces that melts. I'm gonna have a barnyard not too far from my well, 24/7, all the time. Normally with dog feces, in the summer, once it springs up, this spring it dries up, the nitrate doesn't affect your wells. To clean nitrate out of my well, and for me to have clean drinking water, I have to test it, which is about $200 for the test. If it does pop nitrate, I have to bleach it for 3 days and not use my water, run it through my system, and then do another test. And if it pops again, I start over. So with these animals being close to my well, not only towards my door and my windows, I'm never gonna be able to open up my windows. These animals are loud. I don't know if you've ever heard ducks all the time, chickens all the time, or goats. I don't know how the sheep is, he's new, but the goats are very loud. They screech. So to have that constantly at my doorstep and I get to say nothing. I get to do nothing. You see the pictures. This is not what this property was. It was a cute little property when I moved there. So I'm just asking, when you look at these rules or permits, that you actually look and see if it's a neighborhood. We might be rural residential, but we're a neighborhood that have decent homes and nice neighbors. It's a neighborhood, not a farm that should be like Farm Loop, where they have farms. You know, I understand they may want animals, but it's not like they need them for survival. These, I don't know if they're pets or what, but who's gonna pay for those testings that we need? Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, and once again, the city is very friendly these days, and I would suggest that you get a hold of.
I have had contact with Ms. Nygaard. The issue I have with that is for 2 years, that's what I was told. I did the website, they said do a ticket for nuisance animal, for code compliance. I did all that. All those tickets are still open, and for 2 years I have heard for nothing. 2 weeks ago, I talked to the court, or the city clerk, and she said, I'm gonna hook you up with this lady over in planning. She will call you back. I left her a message. I have not heard from that person. So I called the city clerk again this morning, I think it was, yes. And she hooked me up finally with Ms. Nygaard. She did call me back, thank you. And she's kind of told me the steps and told me about this meeting. But I have been told that, but not once did I get a response back. Charlie was working with me, he apparently promoted, and I never heard nothing after that. They were supposed to be inspected 2 years ago. That's never happened. So I'm sorry, but I don't have a whole lot of confidence of work with the city. I've done every step you guys have said I had to do, and no one has worked with me.
I apologize for that. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak tonight? With no one wishing to speak, we now move on to comments. Does the clerk have any comments?
Thank you, Commissioner Seals. Just a reminder that the next meeting is October 22nd, and I wanted to thank the members who came out tonight and told us about what's going on in the community, and I will follow up as necessary and get contact information from you, and also make copies of the items that you presented, and work with any of the other departments as needed. Thank you.
Deputy Administrator Nygaard, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Chair. I think it just demonstrates how important it is to communicate with the neighbors and communicate with the public on what we're doing. So in our first conversation, I said we are in the process of reevaluating how the Title 16 should be modernized to be relevant, and that we are hearing a lot of, growth is painful. And so we're hearing a lot of feedback from rural residential, what that looks like. And so I would encourage you and your friends to continue coming to these meetings. And the same with Dr. Martin. He's expressed on a number of times, he just wants to have his voice heard. So we will make it a priority to get the businesses together on Main Street and make sure that you guys put something forward to DOT as far as the concerns.
Thank you. City Attorney, do you have any comments this evening?
Thank you, Commissioner Seals. I'd like to echo Crystal's comments and thank the members of the public who came out tonight to comment. As we work through this Title 16 rewrite, Holly and I have been working closely with city administration and with the council and the commission to kind of take the draft where it should go in terms of policy and coming up with a work product which is easy for members of the public and for the city to navigate. But we also want to focus on creating a product that works well for everybody, and we can't do that unless we are receiving feedback from the public about what is working and what isn't working. We won't know unless people tell us, so thank you.
Commissioner Brown, do you have any comments this evening?
Thank you, Chair. First one, to the clerk, any way we can get the enforcement officer just to go out and look and see if there's any current violations?
Through the chair, this is Clerk Wellman. Yes, absolutely.
So we need to put a priority on that. I'm not saying we'll be able to solve the problem, but at least we can get an update on what the enforcement officer sees at the scene. Again, thank for the presentation tonight, outstanding. Also, thanks for whoever is responsible for fixing the potholes on Church Road. Glad to see that.
That was DOT, but
Oh.
we appreciate it too.
And to the public, thanks for coming out, and I encourage you to come back at least listen in as we rewrite 16, because a lot of these issues will be addressed. And as you heard from, I think, from the commissioner, we all had some concerns about Main Street and Yenlo, how that's gonna look and how it's gonna affect the public. So we will be continually watching that, and, but we need your input and your complaints and your concerns, so everyone hears. And to the works, don't DOT hold a community town hall or something to address some of these issues?
Yeah, I think the length of this project and the turnover a casualty has been the public outreach.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's definitely something we need to strengthen, and as Commissioner Nygaard said, we need to bring back the stakeholders, because they're on the march to get it done, but, you know, it started and stopped so many times that I think some of that public comment has kind of fallen to the wayside.
I mean, we can't force DOT because they don't work for us, but at least we can suggest to DOT to have a community meeting. Thank you.
Commissioner Stafford, do you have any comments?
I do, thank you. I want to thank the public for being here. For those of you with the concerns about the farm animals, I would also suggest coming to the city council meeting. They're held on Mondays, every other Monday. They're also working on the Title 16 rewrite. I think it'd be a good place to also voice your concerns and make yourself heard there at the city council meeting. They have the same format where there's a 3-minute public participation period, and I think it'd be great for them to hear from you as well.
And the next meeting would be?
Next Monday.
Next Monday, the 14th. Yeah.
At 6, yep.
Yep, at 6 o'clock right here in the same room. And again, same format, they'll have you write your name, share your name, and then you'll get 3 minutes to express your concerns. And I think they need to hear it as well, because they're part of this rewrite as well. So, and then Eric, I had a question, as Dr. Martin was sharing, think about the bike path, the walking path, could that be moved back a block so that Main Street was primarily vehicle traffic and any pedestrian or bike traffic going north to south would be back on, what is it, Kinnick Street, I think it would be? I mean, is that something that could be considered, that we shunt the bikes and the pedestrians over a block where there's less vehicle traffic?
Well,
And then that would leave more room it's less space we're taking up on the Main Street corridor.
yeah, I don't have perfect knowledge on how it started. I think one of the reasons, as Mr. Martin's wife brought up, I think one of the reasons that section looks different was the initial layout had on-street parking for those 3 blocks.
Right.
And then it was removed over different parts. Different constituents said, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it. So now it's all gone. But DOT kept the backside of the sidewalk at the same spot because, if I recall correctly, they said that they anticipate needing another lane in the future. And so I can get more information from the project team that has kind of the changes, but I believe that's why that area looks different, is because of the idea that when DOT comes in and touches a right of way, they make all of the utilities move back as far as they can, and then they maximize their control of it. And so they're gonna push the sidewalks to the edge of the right of way. And so like the H&R Block building is a good example. The building really needs to move, but short of buying it, which, you know, the DOT's cost averse, but they're trying to shoehorn in as many lanes in there as possible, turn lanes, all that stuff. So I think they're just feeling geometric constraints in some of these areas, and I think the major change was that there's now no longer any on-street parking in that area, and so they've kept it as a holding place for future expansion.
Okay, I appreciate that, because obviously getting traffic through is a priority, but long-term business owners have a stake in the game as well. And hopefully DOT will provide some time I know like for the KGB project, they did 2 meetings a year for 5 years, 'cause I went to almost all of them. So hopefully they'll do at least some public input. Like I said, I know it's gone through, 4 different project managers and 4 different
Yeah.
consultants, and
Yeah, and there was a time when several months where they didn't have anyone assigned to it, and it got wrapped around the axle with the stip. And,
yeah.
But I'll bring that to the the DOT project manager and say, you know, we need to bring this back for another public meeting.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. And thanks to the public for coming. This is how small towns work, is when everyone's involved and everyone has a voice. That's all, Commissioner, or Chairman.
Yeah, this is Chair Seals. Thank you for the presentation, Eric. That was very informative, and I appreciate the fact that you'll get us a copy of this print so that we can expand it and really crunch what's happening in that 3-block area. I know that looking through city code, there is a mechanism that we have in code now where we can not necessarily direct DOT, but it's probably has a little more teeth than just a conversation with them. So I think I will get with Zoe and see what we can do to get, if we need help to push forward a public hearing on this matter. I appreciate all the public participation tonight. As Commissioner Stafford said, this is how the city works. It doesn't always work how everybody wants it to work, but you being here tonight makes it one step closer to working together. So thank you very much. With no further business at hand, I'm adjourning this meeting unless an objection is raised. Hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned at 7:26 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Notice you put it